We're back. Hello, Blue Jackets fans. We've been waiting for this day for a very long time. Welcome to our rebranded podcast. We are now Union Junction. I am your host, Mark Scheig, and it is so good to be back with you. It's Thursday, September the 2nd. Wait a minute, it's September already. You mean to tell me that we're almost ready for hockey? Well, yeah, everything about this year has just been wild, crazy. We barely had a summer. We might have a little bit of summer left, but we're preparing for a lot of different things. So really appreciate you taking the time to join us here on our rebranded podcast. And we're calling it Union Junction. Of course, as you know, Union, one of the colors of the Blue Jackets. And here we are. We made a decision over the off season. We had the show, The Hockey Writers Live, which we thoroughly enjoyed. We brought on different guests from all around the hockey world and wanted to kind of give you a sense of what was going on among the different teams. But the more we thought about it and we looked at some of the other shows that we have, it seems that fans really focus in on their team. And while we had a lot of podcasts on our network already, one of the ones that we did not have yet was for the Blue Jackets. So we made a decision that starting this season and then moving forward, we're going to do a dedicated Blue Jackets podcast. And the way it's going to work is that we're going to record once a week, normally on Wednesday night, and we'll drop the episode on Thursday. And we're going to try and get as much information as we can in and around 30 minutes for you. So it gives you an opportunity to keep up with the team, talk about the news that's going on. We'll hopefully have a different guest periodically, whether it be from the team, whether it be a member of the media, whether it be one of our writers. And this year too, we're going to have some fans join us as well, because I don't know about you, but fans make everything tick. And it's something that I thoroughly believe in, that the voice of the fan really needs to be heard, because, we have a pulse of the team, but they follow them too day in and day out. And they certainly have a pulse that we have to keep track of. So watch out for that. We're also going to have a lot of Monsters coverage this year. Once a month, we're going to dedicate a show to the Cleveland Monsters. Tony Brown's going to join us. I know Elaine and Dina are going to join us at different points as well to keep us up to date on what's going on in Cleveland, because they're going to have a very interesting year, just like the Blue Jackets. So just wanted to take that time to explain to you why we're doing these changes. We wanted to have a dedicated show for you that you can depend on once a week. So here we are. This is Union Junction. This is episode 1. We're going to jump right into the headlines for you here. And so, September the 2nd now, right? And, we saw offer sheets going out. We saw new contracts being signed. Colton Parayko got a new contract here on Wednesday. But look at the Blue Jackets. Their business is done right now, right? So, Werenski got the new deal. Boone Jenner got the new deal. They had the great offseason. All of their RFAs are in. So the question is, they've got over $10 million in cap space. They literally could go into this season and be ready for training camp. They've made all their moves. I guess the question that we need to consider is, are they really done? And who knows? The answer to that is we really don't know. But if we know anything, this team still kind of lacks top-end center depth. We know that they did well at the draft. We know they got Kent Johnson, who they think is going to be a center. We know they got Cole Cylinder, who they think is going to be a center. So down the road, it's going to be fine. But what about this year? Is if you take a look at a lot of the projections, the experts, and what they're saying, a lot of people are down on the Columbus Blue Jackets. And a big reason for that is the real lack of top-end center depth. They just don't have what some of the other teams in the Metropolitan Division have. So it kind of makes you wonder, are they really done? Would they consider doing an offer sheet? The Jack Eichel situation still out there. Elias Pettersson still unsigned and would be a very attractive option if the Blue Jackets wanted to go after that. But at the end of the day, though, I think this comes down to expectations when it's all said and done. I don't think it's a good idea for them to go after Jack Eichel right now. There's too many questions out there. Surgery's yet to come. Who knows how long he's going to be out after this surgery. The price right now, the Sabres apparently are keeping a real high price, as you know they probably should for somebody of Eichel's caliber, but they've really dug in. They haven't lowered their price at all. And if the Sabres aren't lowering their price, I don't think the Blue Jackets are in a position right now to try to go after that. Mainly because, are they really a contender right now? Like if they were one piece away from being a contender, I think you can make the argument that you try to explore that. You know, you still have to see if there's a fit there. You know, maybe the price comes down. Maybe you don't have to trade as much away. But if they're sticking to their guns and they want 4 premium pieces, where the Blue Jackets are still trying to build the right way here and trying to get back to where they want to go, I think that's a little counterintuitive unless the price comes way down for them in order to do Jack Eichel. I think the same argument goes with the offer sheet. As much as the Columbus Blue Jackets would love to get a guy like Elias Pettersson, I don't think 4 first-round picks is the way to go. Now, granted, you can get them back, and maybe they could be late first if you do really well. You know, I wrote about that the other day in our rumors piece on Monday. But again, it'd be kind of counterintuitive, right? You know, you're trying to rebuild, you're trying to get pieces in place. So why are you trying to trade away your future? I understand Pettersson's a really, really good player. You know, 22 years old, you might have to sign him for over $10 million. You have him hopefully for 5-6 years or more, and he'd be a wonderful addition. Imagine Patrick Laine and Elias Pettersson together. That would be pretty deadly. But again, you'd probably have to part, you have to part with 4 first rounders if you do an offer sheet. Now, it's not the Jarmo Kekalainen. Now, listen, he's not afraid to make a move. I mean, just look at the Panarin situation. And then depending on what you believe happened with Mitch Marner, of course, the rumors are out there that the Blue Jackets were possibly interested in signing Mitch Marner an offer sheet back before he re-signed with the Maple Leafs. So that possibility is certainly there. I just think, though, at the end of the day, if they were one legitimate piece away from truly contending, I think they're going all in on both of those. But right now, the way things are kind of trending, they're kind of back in a brick by brick approach, and the future's looking bright. Why part with that? Why part with 4 first round picks at this point? Why part with 4 premium pieces if you're looking at Jack Eichel? The business is done. Now, it's not to say they won't make any moves. I mean, there could be a situation where maybe a real good player becomes available, for some reason, or maybe they're in a position to take on a bad contract and get an extra really good pick out of it. So I'm not saying that moves won't be done, but in terms of centers, I think we're going to get what we're going to get as camp kind of starts up here. Alex Texier in the middle, Jack Roslovic in the middle, Boone Jenner can play in the middle. So there's certainly some options there. Well, we'll see how it all goes as they go into training camp. So let's jump to number 2 here on headlines. Traverse City, and if you can believe that 2 weeks from now, on the 16th, they're going to be playing their first game in Traverse City. Yeah, again, where the heck did this summer go? We're already talking about the prospects tournament. Of course, didn't play last year because of the pandemic. And this year it's going to be a little bit different because there's only going to be a few teams there. It's not going to be as many. So still going to be super interesting. Rosters, the final rosters will come out here, I would say, in the days leading up to the tournament. That's what they usually release it a couple days before. But if you saw the reports today, I know Aaron Portzline of The Athletic indicated that Yegor Chinakhov is going to be there. That shouldn't surprise anybody. I mean, considering he's come over to North America, and I'm going to actually talk about him in a minute here on headlines. He's actually number 3. I think he's actually the most interesting story that we need to be following of the Blue Jackets in this preseason, and I'll lay that out why for you. I think Cole Sellinger is going to be there. So again, there's going to be some really interesting players at this tournament. So a lot to look forward to there. Details should be coming out over the coming days as toward a final roster, who some of the invites are going to be, different things like that. But, they've enjoyed success there before. I don't see any reason why they can't enjoy some success again, because, again, there's going to be some really good players up there for them. So like I said, Yegor Chinakhov, this is going to be the story that I think we need to pay attention to the most when it comes to the Columbus Blue Jackets. As this training camp gets going, as the preseason gets going, the story. Nobody, hardly anybody in the world heard of him last year when Jarmo Kekalainen went up to that microphone and announced that he would be a first round pick. I mean, we were scrambling to find out information about this guy, and it even caught people on TV off guard about who this guy was. So what does he go and do? He has an incredible season in the KHL. Now he's over here in North America. He wants to make the Blue Jackets right away. And that's going to be the story because, listen, he certainly has an NHL caliber shot, but, first time over here, it's going to be a lot of adjustment. How quickly is he going to make that adjustment? And here's the even bigger thing is that there's quite a divide out there between what the experts think of him and then what ultimately Jarmo Kekalainen and the team think of him. If you recall, Jarmo in the past has mentioned some comparisons, mainly because of his shot, to Artemi Panarin. So that's pretty high praise there. And why would they take him with a first round pick? Because they think that he's going to be a special player. But then if you look at the scouting community, there's some people that kind of believe in what he might bring, but then there's some that still have their doubts. And so anytime that you have a great divide like that between a scouting community and a team, that always makes for an interesting debate. And that's why he's going to be one of the players that we're going to watch very closely, because he did decide to come over here. He's either going to make the Blue Jackets out of camp if he really kills it, or he's going to end up with the Cleveland Monsters, working on trying to get used to the game and stuff like that. So regardless, he's going to be playing in Ohio, either in Cleveland or in Columbus. And, ultimately who's going to be right here? I mean, it's not the first time that the Blue Jackets went off the board to take somebody only to know that they were right about it. I understand they traded Pierre-Luc Dubois, and that's a whole different situation. But remember, that was supposed to be Jesse Puljujärvi, wasn't it? Right. Mm-hmm. Everybody in the hockey world thought that Puljujärvi was going to go third in that draft in Buffalo. Yeah, no, not according to the Blue Jackets. They ultimately, and look, Puljujärvi's doing much better now in Edmonton. Give him full credit. But a lot of people questioned the Pierre-Luc Dubois pick. And, before things really fell apart, he was a stud. And it made Jarmo Kekalainen look really good. So anytime that they make a pick like that, it kind of makes you stop and think. At the end of the day, he's been doing this for a very long time. He's picked some really good players. And this one will be an interesting test to see. Can he meet the expectations that are around him? Can he make this Blue Jackets roster right away? Really going to be up to him. And then, we'll follow his development from there. And that's why I think that he's going to be the most interesting player to watch. And I'll give you another one just real quick before I move on. Gregory Hoffman is another one that I think we really need to be watching from a Blue Jackets standpoint. Again, coming over from overseas, the Blue Jackets acquired him in a trade. But again, very interesting player that someone could come in and potentially grab a roster spot right off the bat. It would not surprise me, knowing the kind of game that he plays, that he can, make an impact on this Blue Jackets roster. Because if there's anything that they need depth. They need good depth. They need scoring depth. He's proven that he can do it overseas. Can he come over here and do the same thing? I expect him to make this roster, but again, Camp's going to sort all that out. But again, Chinakhov and Hoffman are the two guys that I'm going to pay the most attention to as this camp gets going. One more headline for you guys here before we get to the last part of the show, and that is what is going on with the goaltending situation. All the reports out there, Joonas Korpisalo, Elvis Merzļikins, one of them was going to be traded. Will one of them be traded? Will one of them be extended? What is all going on here? So let's try to recap the scenario for you. So if you, obviously, we would be remiss without talking about Matiss Kivlenieks, that whole situation that happened with the fireworks. And obviously it's a very tough situation to deal with, but at the same time, that situation may have changed the approach of the Blue Jackets. At the end of the day, they lost their third goaltender, and they have to do something. Maybe they sign somebody else. Not sure Daniil Tarasov is ready. So that leaves, maybe you have to carry both of them. And if you recall earlier in the offseason, Jarmo Kekalainen mentioned that they might be considering doing that. And at this point, even though they're both going to be due new contracts coming up, and they need to have their organization in order. But it doesn't mean that the trade is not happening. You recall, I think it was a couple of Mondays ago, we recapped what Frank Saravalli said, that there might be interest with the Edmonton Oilers, and the whole Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen for a team that has the likes of Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, a newly signed Darnell Nurse, and others. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is back. They're looking for playoffs. They're looking for deep playoff runs. They have to make a decision. Do they feel like they can get to where they want to go with a goaltending duo of Smith and Koskinen? And if you recall what Frank said on his show, DFO Rundown, he mentioned that the Blue Jackets and the Oilers might have been talking about Joonas Korpisalo, where reportedly anyway, the Blue Jackets are interested in a first-round pick. And then possibly if they're taking on, say Koskinen, they might get a prospect out of that. So it's really up to the Oilers here. How are they happy with their goaltending situation? Do they feel like they need an upgrade? Listen, Joonas Korpisalo was an all-star. When he played in front of a good team, he was lights out. All you got to do is look back at that 5 overtime marathon that's probably still going on right now somewhere, where he made 80 some saves. He was just unbelievable. And I understand the numbers didn't look great last year. A lot of different times he looked a little bit overmatched. The Blue Jackets looked pretty overmatched most nights last year. Let's be honest here. We really can't pin it on one player. But Korpisalo's got value. And if you can put him into a team that, like the Oilers, that can score, and, if they could really figure their defense out, in my mind, that's an upgrade. And it's a decision that they're going to have to make. Now, the question will be, would the Blue Jackets be willing to make that deal? If they get a first-round pick out of it, I don't know how you say no to that, because then you get a third first-round pick in a loaded 2022 draft to be able to accelerate your rebuild even more. Plus, you get a capable backup in Mikko Koskinen that you can throw out there once every 3 games, 4 games, whatever it ends up being, and let Elvis Merzļikins be your starter. Yeah. If I'm the Blue Jackets, I 100% do that. So let's watch the rest of the month here. Let's see how the goaltending situation shakes out. Personal opinion here, I do think that Merzļikins is the one that they're going to keep. And I think they're going to extend him at some point. I know one of the fans asked a question about that. We'll kind of address that now. I think that if it is Merzļikins that they keep, he's making $4 million a year now as his cap hit. I think it's very reasonable to expect that he gets over 5 on his next contract, maybe up towards 6, depending on the kind of year he has this year. We saw glimpses of how good he was. He had the 3 straight shutouts, remember, at one point. Again, when you have a good team in front of you and you have the goalie like Merzļikins, who, a little bit of a showman, can be athletic, can really, take over a game on his own. That's the thing that we're going to watch here. How much is he going to be worth, and is he the one that they're going to keep? I personally think they keep him, but again, it's going to work itself out. And if they do keep both at the start, it'll be very interesting to see how Brad Larson decides to start them. If it's Merzļikins number 1, if it's Korpisalo number 1, Camp's going to work all that out for us. So this will have no shortage of storylines as we get going here. Again, Camp's going to start up, we're talking just under 3 weeks now, where they come in and get their physicals, get camp going, and then finally get the preseason going. So don't blink, it's coming quickly, fans. So that's your headlines. And so now for the rest of the show, we're going to devote the last 10 minutes to the fans out there. And we really want to make this show a place where you guys can come in, listen to what we talk about with the news, and we react to the news and stuff like that. But we're a big believer here that we want your voice heard. Now, that's the biggest thing. You make everything tick. You click on this podcast, you click on our articles, you can click and you read, all the different things. But we want this show to be about you. We want to hear from you. So we're going to give you a couple different outlets to be able to do that. So we're going to be able to we're going to ask a question of the week every week. And then we're also going to have you ask me anything, anything that's on your mind. It can be Blue Jackets related. It can be Monsters related. It can be about life in general, but be creative. Let's have a good, fun conversation. And as we move forward here in future episodes, we're going to do that. We're going to have a lot of fun here. We're going to have a lot of great guests. We're going to have a lot of great banter. We're going to have fans as guests. So stay tuned for that opportunity. I'll be reaching out to some of you super fans out there so that you get an opportunity to join this show and let your voice be heard to the Blue Jackets masses out there. So again, really appreciate you joining us here. Let's jump into the question of the week. And I took to Twitter and I asked for this question. And it's based on a poll that kind of came out that's just absolutely downright hilarious. It says, how stressful is it for you as a Blue Jackets fan and why? Real simple question. Now, I got the motivation from this because there was a poll that recently came out, it was this week, that indicated the team fan bases that were under the most stress. Turned out that the Edmonton Oilers were number one. And you know what? No argument there. Listen, when you have McDavid, when you have Draisaitl, and you have the talent that you have, and you are constantly worried about even if you can make it out of the first round every year, and you're wasting all this talent, my God, you have every right to be stressed. They got that one right. But here is the downright hilarious part. They somehow put the Philadelphia Flyers and the Toronto Maple Leafs near the bottom of this list in the 20s. Are you joking? How in the world do you have the Flyers and the Leafs down that far? Any list that has the stressful fan bases must start in some order with the Oilers, the Flyers, and the Leafs, because I don't know about you, but when I think of those fan bases, I feel like that their life completely revolves around hockey 100% of the time, 24/7, 365. Like every decision in their life is based on how their team does. So God, if you're a Leafs fan, yeah, you're stressed. How are you going to get through and win a playoff round? Look at all the talent you've had. You haven't been able to do it. Yeah, I'd be stressed too. And if you follow the Philadelphia Flyers, they are a constant ball of stress. So again, sorry, interesting list, but a joke of a list that they had those two teams down there. But that's why I want to take it to you, the Blue Jackets fan, to indicate, okay, how stressful is it for you? So let me read some of the comments that came from this. I'm going to start with Michael Neff. It's at Michael Neff 44. He says, how stressful? We're currently in a rebuild. So it's not very stressful at the moment to me. This season brings so many new people to the team that I'm just looking forward to watch the team with no expectations at all. And that has me really excited, actually. You know what? This is a really reasonable take because the expectation level usually coincides with how stressed a fan base is. So if you know going in that they're in a rebuild, the future is a few years away with their best prospects in college or in juniors and stuff like that, you hope that your team competes. And, I think the Blue Jackets can absolutely compete. They're in a tough division, but, they can give anybody a tough night, especially if their goaltender is on and they get some timely scoring, Voracek gets going. If they can find Patrick Laine's sweet spot, they can be competitive. Again, they have to figure out their center depth as well. But I think fans for the most part agree with Michael that they understand where the team is at. So it actually puts less stress on where, if they lose, we kind of saw this coming, and it might ultimately lead to a better draft pick anyway. But if they win, it's even more exciting because they're seeing the growth of the team. So I think that is a very reasonable take by Michael there. Let me go through Twitter here and let's find a couple of other responses to this. Okay, so at F the 21191 says only Chinakhov is real. I'm not even going to ask what that means, but he took time to answer, and it's short and sweet. It says less stress since the draft and Tort's departure. Now, interesting. I wonder how many fans are relieved that John Tortorella is gone. Granted, he is the best coach in my mind in franchise history. Took him to the playoffs all those times, all the wins that he's gotten. But oh my God, did he get to some fans big time? Lineup decisions, the way he answered questions sometimes. I don't think that this is the only fan that thinks that there's less stress because John Tortorella is gone. I think the time was up for him. And yeah, so that's one way of definitely thinking about it. You know, they can go into this year knowing that there's a fresh voice in Brad Larson there. And yeah, interesting answer. Appreciate that. Justin Needham, my buddy, at jneedham24 on Twitter. He says the following. He says, I don't think stressful is the right word. Games can be stressful in the moment. Honestly, I felt more disappointment than stressed about the team lately. I think we've had a good summer, but I'm not sure we're anywhere close to contending. Justin, they're not close to contending. They're going to say, and they do this every year. Now they say that, they're going to compete for the playoffs. And Jarmo Kekalainen is not very patient when it comes to stuff like that. So they're going to try to make the playoffs, but I think it's very reasonable to assume, given where they're at with the center depth. And look, we haven't even talked about the defense yet. We've got Adam Boquist in now. Jake Bean is in now. You got a new defensive core with Zach Werenski being the number one. So there's obviously going to be some time needed for them to get familiar with each other, get that chemistry going. So yeah, disappointed though. He says, honestly, I felt more disappointed than stressed. And, the disappointment comes, the expectations were raised under John Tortorella. The playoffs were expected every year. And then last year happened and it was a complete thud. Everything fell apart. The core is now gone. Nick Foligno's gone. Cam Atkinson is gone. David Savard is gone. They had a good run, but they didn't get to where they wanted to go. And now, they have to look toward the future. So this is, I guess, looking as a transition. So it's disappointing that you have to wait a little bit longer. Totally understandable. But at the end of the day, if they want to get back to contending, this is the road that they have to take. So totally get that, Justin. Very much appreciate you taking the time to respond to that. Got a couple more here on this question, and then I'll go to some of your questions. So Kenneth Gast at GGast13 says, my stress level over sports teams is very low, especially after the last 18 months. Much more important things. That said, expectations are not that high for the Blue Jackets this year, so it's even lower than normal. Would love for them to surprise, but the season after next is important. And there it is. I love that last part from Kenneth. He says that the season after next is important. And I recently wrote too, that the one thing that the Blue Jackets have to get out of this season, 100%, bar none, no excuses, there has to be development. There has to be tangible development, especially on some of the mid-range prospects and some of the fringe players. I'm looking at the Liam FOUDY'S of the world. I'm looking at the Emil Bemstroms of the world. I'm looking at the Andrew Peaks of the world, and I can go on and on here, but development, especially at center, Roslovic is another one too, that development, there has to be tangible evidence of development. That's what would define a successful season, because you're building for the future. If you make the playoffs, that's icing on the cake, given where the team is at. But boy, if you can't get the guys to where they need to be development wise, then you really got to start asking the important questions. So Ken, good job with that. David Stefano says, and he's at DSROTJ, I'd put my stress level relatively low right now, though it was pretty high through most of 2021. The roller coaster itself was the worst part. There was no consistency of the team's plan, lineups, lines, etc. Now that the dust is settled, I'm looking forward to a relatively quiet year. We'll see about that. The season will go how it goes, but hopefully without all the extraneous noise of the last 12 months. Torts, Jonesy, Pierre-Luc Dubois, what's up with Line? When do we throw in the towel? Who gets traded? It was exhausting. It was exhausting for everyone, David. Didn't matter if you're a fan, media, player, part of the team. Last year was just nuts. It was just a revolving soap opera. So yeah, one of the things that they hope to do this year is to have a much more quiet year. We'll see if they're able to do that. And it seemed like every other day something was happening last year. Maybe now they can go to a little bit more quiet time. We'll very much see. But thank you for answering the questions on that. Let's take a couple of your questions now to kind of end our first episode. And I'm out here on Twitter. And let me take a look. Got more of a comment here, but let's start with @Jackets of Ohio on Twitter. And he's listed as Kivy as the name. A couple interesting points here. It says the current prospect pool is as good as any in franchise history. I very much agree with that. Development is crucial, which you have seemed to address with the additions of the coaching staff. I think I agree with that as well. The hiring of Pascal Vincent, who has a great reputation as a development coach, certainly comes to mind. That's going to be a key, I think, is this is a coaching staff that comes in 0 NHL games of experience. Brad Larson never coached an NHL game as a head coach. Pascal Vincent hasn't coached as a head coach. He's coming in as an associate coach. And then Sylvain Lefebvre is on board as well. This is a very young coaching staff. So that development thing, he's confident that development's going to be good because who they brought in. We'll see about that. That's going to be, we just talked about how important development's going to be. It's going to be up to that coaching staff to get the most out of everybody. Can they get to that level? We'll see about that. So thank you for that comment. Let me go back out here and let's look for some questions. Okay. So Madigan O'Brien, very popular out on Twitter. Hope you're doing well, Madigan. You're asking, do you think this will be one of the most competitive training camps the Jackets and their staff have seen in years? And who are the early favorites to secure spots on the team in your mind? We could talk about that for another half an hour if we wanted to, but will it be one of the most competitive? Oh, absolutely. There's absolutely, they want competition. They want players battling for those final spots. Will it be one of the most competitive? Sure, there's new players coming in and some old guys that think that they have a chance. They better come in ready. So yeah, I think it will be one of the more competitive training camps that are out there. Who are some of the early favorites to secure spots? I think Gregory Hoffman's the name to watch. I really do. For everything that I've read about him, he seems like that he's ready to go here. I think he's somebody that could theoretically come in and make an impact. Outside of that, there's some interesting names to watch. Liam Foudy, how much has he progressed? We know of his speed. Where's the rest of his game at? Is Emil Bemstrom ready to take the next step? Here's the thing, though, that we've got to really, really watch for. Can Brad Larson get more out of these guys than Torts did? That's going to be an important question. Think about Torts. He always leaned on veterans. He always trusted veterans, but there was usually a short leash when it came to some of the younger players. He put Liam Foudy on the fourth line when he played. He put Emil Bemstrom on the fourth line, who are more offensively minded guys. Can they get into a higher role in the lineup? Will Brad Larson look at things a little bit differently? I think that's going to be a very important question here. Who can secure a spot? I think it's going to come down to deployment and how different is Larson going to be. He's already admitted he's going to be his own coach. So we'll see, what he's like, as this camp goes on. So that will be very interesting. Next question actually speaks on Foodie. Chad Elwood at Chad Elwood asked, haven't heard much on Foodie this offseason. Was impressed by him at the start of 2020 playoffs. Where does he stand on this roster? And would more minutes in a top line role benefit him? I feel like the fourth line duties don't help developing a player like his skill set. It's like he's in my mind. Absolutely. Like we just talked about, Chad. That's exactly right. Remember, he scored that tremendous goal in game 5 in a Toronto bubble, if you remember. And that was when Tortorella came out with the "he's got balls" comment. He was really impressive then. The speed was a difference, and he showed that he wasn't afraid. But then, the defensive side of the game and trying to learn that, and he just really, he's sent back to Cleveland for a while. So yeah, we haven't really heard of him because, this is an important offseason for him to be able to demonstrate that he can play as a consistent top 9 player. And he's somebody that we're going to watch very closely. And I feel like that if he's going to be relegated to the fourth line again, boy, I'm not sure Columbus would be the place for him if that's going to be. He needs to play, whether it be a second line role, maybe third line role. I'm not sure he's ready for a top line role at this point, but you got to see what you have in him. You really do now. This is an important season for him, especially development wise. Let's see what they're able to get out of him. But he's somebody we're very much going to watch closely. He also had one other question Chad did, and actually just says, are we in a rebuild, a reload, trying to make a run? Well, they're definitely in a rebuild. I mean, they got rid of the core that they got rid of. So it's a little bit of a new leadership. They're also reloading at the same time. And yeah, at the same time, they're going to try and make a run. I mean, don't try and tell some of the veterans that they have no chance. They're certainly going to try. Whether they can do it or not is a completely different story. But yeah, they're in the midst of a rebuild, trying to reload, and they'll do their best to make a run. But man, it's going to be really, really tough for them in order to get to where they want to go. But you know what? That's it for now. So fans, I really appreciate you taking the time to answer the stressful question and taking the time to send me some of your questions. A lot of good stuff in here, and this is what you're going to get on a weekly basis on the show. Again, we're going to do headlines. We're going to react to all the news. We're going to have some wonderful guests, and we're going to end the show every week answering a different question of the week and answering your questions. So I hope that this is going to be enjoyable for you as it is going to be for me. I actively encourage you to participate. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free. It's legitimately ask me anything. And if it's creative enough, it is going to make this show. We're going to make your voice heard. So thank you very much for joining us on the very first episode of Union Junction, our dedicated The Hockey Writers Blue Jackets podcast. Have a great week, and we will see you next week at this time.